Okay, so in this lesson, we're going to talk about evaluating functions. And this is mainly, some of this is going to be a review, some will not, but it's going to be important for when we start talking about the difference quotient. So in a little while, in the next lesson, we'll do problems where we have to find the difference quotient. But in order to be able to do that, you have to be able to do these evaluations of functions. So for example, suppose we'll start with a simple one. So let's suppose number one that you're given that the function f of x is 2x minus 5. All right, suppose we had that. And let's suppose that part A, you want to find, let's do find each of the following. And let's say in part A, you want to find f of 3. Now that's an easy one. You've had that before. So where we see, remember, 3 took the place of x. So where we see the variable x, you're going to plug in 3. And so you're going to say that's going to be 2 times x. Remember, x is 3. That's your x right here. Minus 5. And then using the order of operations, 2 times 3 is 6. And then 6 minus 5 is 1. So therefore, f of 3 is equal to 1. Now, remember what you found was that when x is 3, the y value is 1. That's what you found. Because remember, f of x means the same thing as y. Okay, B, suppose you want to find this, though. Suppose you want to find f of x plus 1. F of x plus 1. All right, so again, wherever we see the variable x, remember, this took the place of x here. So that was x. Remember, f of x, and x is now x plus 1. So wherever we see the variable x, you're going to plug in x plus 1. So I get 2 times x, which is x plus 1, put that in parentheses because both these terms have to be multiplied by 2, and then minus 5. And now simplifying this, distribute, you get 2x plus 2 minus 5, and so you get 2x minus 3. So what we found is that f of x plus 1 is going to equal 2x minus 3. So there's your answer. So notice that when I substituted just a number, ended up, when I substituted 3, I ended up with a real number as the answer. When I substituted an expression into the variable x, I ended up with an expression, an algebraic expression. Okay? All right, C. Suppose you want to find f of x minus 3. Well, same thing. Let's do 2x minus 3. F of 2x minus 3. Same thing. You do the same thing like you did in part B. So wherever you see the variable x, you're going to plug in 2x minus 3. So I'm going to get 2 times x, in parentheses, I'm going to put in 2x minus 3, and then subtract 5. And so I get, use a distributive property, I get 2 times 2x is 4x, 2 times a negative 3 is a negative 6, and then subtract 5. And so when I simplify, when I combine like terms, I get 4x minus 11. So what I found is that f of 2x minus 3 is equal to 4x minus 11. Okay, what if I had this? What if I had f of x plus h? F of x plus h. Well, again, where we see the variable x, I'm going to plug in x plus h. So if you need to underline this, that's what you're going to plug into x. So I get 2x. Remember, x becomes x plus h. So 2 times x plus h minus 5, and then distribute, I get 2x plus 2h minus 5. Now in the previous problem, see right here, I can combine like terms. Here, there are no like terms, so there's nothing else you can do. So you're going to say f of x plus h equals this. All right, so that's number 1. Okay, number 2, suppose you're given this. Suppose you're given, now this was a linear function right here. Let's go ahead and do a quadratic one. So let's suppose my function, I'm going to call this g of x this time. Let's suppose my function is quadratic. So let's suppose it's x squared minus 3x plus 4. All right? And so I want to find each of the following. And so let's say I want to find a. So let's suppose a is negative 3. So we'll make it a number, negative 3. So wherever I see the variable x, I'm going to plug in negative 3. So I get, now we've got to be careful. Make sure you put all these, when you substitute negative 3, make sure you put them in parentheses. So this is negative 3 squared minus 3 times negative 3 plus 4. So notice in place of x, wherever I saw the x, I plugged in negative 3. So make sure you put those in parentheses. And the parentheses be important because a negative 3 squared means negative 3 times itself, so that's 9. If you had not put parentheses, you'd probably write this as a negative 9, and that's incorrect. And over here, a negative 3 times a negative 3 is a positive 9, and then plus, and that's a 4, plus 4. And so therefore, g of negative 3 is equal to 18 plus 4 is 22. All right, so that's g of negative 3. All right, B, suppose I want to find g of 2x. G of 2x. So not g of x, but g of 2x. So again, wherever we see the variable x, I'm going to plug in 2x. So I'm going to get, and put that in parentheses, so 2x squared. So remember that was x. So in place of x, I'm going to plug in 2x minus 3 times x, which is now 2x plus 4. All right, so now I'm going to simplify this. 2x times 2x is 4x squared. So that goes here, 4x squared. 3 minus a negative 3 times 2x is a negative 6x, and then plus 4. And there's nothing you can combine, so there's your answer. So g of 2x equals this right here, 4x squared minus 6x plus 4. So notice that when I substituted a number, I ended up with a number, a real number. When I substituted an algebraic expression, I ended up with an algebraic expression. All right, C, suppose you want to find g of x minus 2. That's fine, x minus 2. All right, now that's going to be a little bit more work. So watch why that's going to be a little bit more work. So I'm going to get, wherever you see the variable x, I'm going to plug in x minus 2. So this one, what I'm going to substitute. But put that in parentheses. So x minus 2, remember that takes the place of x, but I've got to square that. So I got to square that. Minus 3 times, and then remember x has been replaced by x minus 2. Oops. X minus 2, and then plus this 4. All right, now I've got to square this right here, so I got to figure out what that is. So let's kind of go off to the side here. So x minus 2 times x minus 2. So remember, that's a binomial squared. So I'm going to FOIL this. So x times x is x squared. The outer is a negative 2x. The inner is a negative 2x. And the last, a negative 2 times negative 2 is a positive 4. Combining like terms, I get x squared minus 4x. A negative 2x and negative 2x is a negative 4x. And then plus 4. So that goes here. X squared minus 4x plus 4. All right, over here, I'm going to just distribute. So a negative 3 times x is negative 3x. A negative 3 times a negative 2 is a positive 6, and then plus 4. And now combining like terms, I'm going to get x squared. A negative 4x and a negative 3x is a negative 7x. A positive 4, a positive 6, and a positive 4 is a positive 14. So g of x minus 2 equals x squared minus 7x plus 14. All right, D. All right, suppose we had g of x plus h. G of x plus h. Now watch how that one's going to differ. So remember a while ago where we had this f of x plus h, and see how you had terms with x's in it, terms with h's in it? All right, so let's see what happens here. Okay, so wherever you see the variable x, I'm going to plug in x plus h. So I'm going to get x plus h squared. So remember, whatever x is, and remember x is going to be now be x plus h. I've got to square it. Minus 3 times x, and x is now x plus h, and then plus 4. So notice, x squared plus minus 3x plus 4. X squared minus 3x plus 4. But instead of saying x squared, I'm saying x plus h squared. Instead of saying 3x, I'm saying 3 times x plus h. So in place of x, you substitute this expression. Okay, I've got to figure out what this is. So just like I did this, I'm going to go off to the side. I'm going to figure this out. So it's x plus h times x plus h. So we've got to use the FOIL method. X times x is x squared. The outer x times h is xh. The inner h times x is also another xh. And the last, h times h, is h squared. Combine like terms, I get x squared. And xh plus an xh is 2xh. And then plus h squared. So that goes here. So this is x squared plus 2xh plus h squared. All right, now distributing, I'm going to get minus 3x. And negative 3 times h is a negative 3h, and then plus 4. Now, notice none of these terms are alike. None of them are alike. They're all different terms. I cannot combine any of them. So that's your answer. So g of x plus h is x squared plus 2xh plus h squared minus 3x minus 3h plus 4. So that's a long one right here. All right, that's going to be important in the difference quotient. So this right here, this x plus h, is going to be used in the difference quotient. So we need to be able to manipulate that. All right, so let's do one more with using this x plus h. I want to use x plus h because of the difference quotient. We're going to need it in a little while. All right, so let's look at number 3. All right, number 3, and let's go ahead and do it with a quadratic function. All right, so let's suppose that h of x is negative 2x squared plus 5x minus 1. All right, and let's just go ahead and find h of x plus h. All right, that's going to be the one that you're going to have to deal with, and you got to be able to manipulate this. All right, so wherever you see the variable x, I'm going to substitute x plus h. That's what I'm interested in finding. What is h of x plus h? I know what h of x is. I want to find out what h of x plus h is. So I'm going to rewrite this as going to be negative 2 times, in place of x, I substitute x plus h. But I've got to square it. Plus 5 times, in place of x, I substitute x plus h. I put it in parentheses because both those terms have to be multiplied by 5. And then minus 1. So notice negative 2x squared plus 5x minus 1. But instead of x, I'm plugging in x plus h. Okay, now you got to be careful. So some students are going to distribute first and then square. You cannot do that. The only time you can distribute is if that number's a 1. See, like here, I can distribute here. I can say this is 5x plus 5h because that's a 1. That's an exponent of a 1. So that's the only time you can distribute is if that's a 1 out here. This is not a 1. That's a 2. So remember the order of operations. I got to square before I multiply. Square before you multiply. So if you had distributed first, that's incorrect. You would have gotten the wrong answer. This expression would have been incorrect. So order of operations, you square and then distribute. Okay, so let's go ahead and figure out. I'm going to go ahead and do that down here. I'm going to figure out what x plus h squared is. Now remember, x plus h, when we do the difference quotient, you're going to see this throughout. All right, so x plus h squared, let's figure out what that is. So that means x plus h times itself. Now using the FOIL method, and we already did that, remember that's this right here. So it's always going to equal this. So don't keep doing it over and over. X plus h times itself will always be x squared plus 2xh plus h squared. But if you can't remember it, then work it out. So x times x is x squared. The outer is xh. The inner is also xh. And the last is h times h is h squared. Combine like terms, I get x squared. There are 2 of these. So 2xh and then plus h squared. So that's this right here. All right, but be careful. That's just this. All of this right here, and that's where you have to be careful. All this right here has to be multiplied by negative 2. So I'm going to write it like this. Notice how I'm writing it. X squared, negative 2 times x squared plus 2xh plus h squared. And then let's go ahead and distribute this one. So it'll be plus 5x plus 5h minus 1. Now go ahead and distribute here. Now it can distribute. So remember a while ago, some of you probably wanted to distribute first. You can't because this was being squared. So you had to do the exponents before you multiply. So now distribute. I get negative 2x squared. And negative 2 times 2xh is negative 4xh. And negative 2 times h squared is a negative 2h squared. And then plus 5x plus 5h minus 1. Now remember, that's h of x plus h. Now notice that all these terms are not alike. They're all different. So I cannot combine anything. So that's going to be your answer. All right, now that's going to be important when we do the difference quotient. See this f of x plus h? Same idea. So you see how much work this is? All right, so you got to be careful. All right, let me do one more where we have to do this x plus h just to show you what to do. All right, so there's number 4. Number 4. Suppose that h of x is, let's say, negative 5x squared minus 6x plus 2. Let's say plus 2. All right, and so let's suppose you want to find h of x plus h. So it's always going to be x plus h in terms of the difference quotient, x plus h. So that's what you got to work on. You got to make sure you can do this. So again, so that means that wherever I see the variable x, I need to plug in x plus h. So then I'm going to rewrite this as negative 5 times, in parentheses, x plus h squared, because I'm squaring it, minus 6 times x becomes x plus h plus 2. Don't forget to put that in parentheses, though. Now, again, don't distribute. You got to square first. So let's figure out what this piece right here is. So that's x plus h squared. So let's figure out what x plus h squared is. Well, that's x plus h times itself. And if I FOIL it out, now remember, this will always be the same as what you did here. These are all, so it's always going to equal that. X plus h squared will always equal the same thing. You see, it's always equal the same thing. X squared plus 2xh plus h squared. Well, the problem is that some students don't remember that, so just FOIL it out. Just be on the safe side. Don't guess at it. FOIL it out. X times x is x squared. The outer is xh. X times h is xh. The inner, h times x, is the same thing as x times h. And then the last, h times h, is h squared. And then combine like terms, I can combine these two. So I get x squared, and xh plus another xh is 2xh, and then plus h squared. And now that right here goes here. That's only this part right here. But don't forget, that's being multiplied by negative 5. So we have to say negative 5 times this. X squared plus 2xh plus h squared. Now distributing here, I can say that's negative 6x minus 6h and then plus this 2. Now go ahead and distribute here. You have to distribute. Don't leave it like this, because that's going to be important when we do all of this soon. So that's going to be negative 5x squared. Negative 5 times 2xh is a negative 10xh. A negative 5 times a positive h squared is a negative 5h squared. And then rewrite everything else over. Now that is h of x plus h. So that's what I just found. So notice none of these terms are alike. They're all different terms. So there's your answer for this. Okay. So again, that's going to be important in a little while when we do this. So that's the end of that part. Just make sure you go back and review this part especially. I think the other part, g of negative 3, finding things like that should be fairly easy for you. Is this right here that gets a little bit more work involved. So just make sure you can do those. All right, that takes care of this part.